So anyway, thanks for having me back. I attempted to give this talk a couple of years ago, and but we got distracted and we started talking about my family's beekeeping business instead, and that took up all the night, so we didn't have time to talk about China. So a couple of years ago I was lucky enough to get on an Australian delegation. It's fixed itself now, fantastic. An Australian delegation of beekeepers that went over to China to have a look at beekeeping over there. This is our delegation, apart from the young girl down the front. She was the interpreter that was assigned to us to get us around and look after us. This was part of there was a standing bilateral agreement between China and Australia, which is still in place, but it's slightly changed their format about how they do it. And so an Australian delegation in some agricultural commodity would go to China and tour around and have a look at things there. Then they'd reciprocate with another delegation. And this was the first one that involved beekeeping. And and it was a great little trip, and but it just sort of raised a lot more questions about some of the things that went on over there and how they did things. So it was a good first one, but really good to go again and learn some more. So this is the group of people that went, all people that three of us there are full-time commercial beekeepers, and the fourth one, the tall guy, is an apiary inspector with the New South Wales DPI. So this is where we went. We started off up the top and flew into Beijing and had a look at Beijing for a few days. Then we travelled down to the Hubei province and then the Zhejiang province, which I've probably pronounced wrong. But these two down the bottom are in the area where most of the beekeeping takes place. So that's the biggest part, where they produce the most raw jelly, they produce the most honey, they've got the most beekeepers, and that's where a lot of it takes place down there. That's their real action centre. Up in Beijing, still a lot of bees around there, but just not as much. So we were there about a total of 10 days, and we had about 3 to 4 days in Beijing, and then about 3 days in the next province, and then about 3 days in the last one as well. So I think Steve was telling me last time I was here giving a talk, we started to try and do the China talk, but running too late, and this is roughly where we got up to. This is basically to just give you a bit of a picture of the difference between Australia and China and the different ratios between things in beekeeping. The land mass area is pretty much the same, but the population, there's just a huge difference. 57 times the population in China than here in Australia. The GDP isn't quite as big, so we're doing quite well. Number of beehives, they've got a lot more beehives than we have here in Australia. They've got more beekeepers than we have here in Australia, and their honey production isn't as big the difference between the honey production per hive or the honey production in total as compared to the amount of beekeepers they have. That's because in Australia here we're fairly blessed with mainly our eucalypts, where we get the bulk of our honey from. They yield honey very heavily, and so we produce a lot of honey, and we export a lot of honey compared to what we produce, because we're producing way more than we're consuming. So the point in time when this was taken, 300,000 tonne of honey produced by China, so that was 2013. They consume about 220,000 tonne of honey, and the two different people asked the same question that we spoke to, said within 10 years they reckon they'll be consuming all of their honey they're producing and be a net importer of honey, because the actual consumption of honey in the country is just going up. As people get wealthier, they'll buy more, and honey is a luxury item, and they're consuming more and more. So at the moment, China is the biggest honey exporting country in the world, and what they do has a dramatic effect on the world market. Back in the early 2000s, China got shut out of the world market for honey because there was contamination within the honey. So they got shut out of that. There was still suspicion that Chinese honey was going onto the international market because there was honey being exported from countries that had never produced and exported honey before, and all of a sudden they were exporting a lot of honey. So there was a suspicion that there was Chinese honey still coming onto the world market, but they were officially banned, and as a consequence of them being put off the world market, the price of honey went through the roof. So back in the early 2000s, it was at levels that hadn't been seen for many, many years. And we're actually back at those levels again now in terms of the bulk price of honey, but that is for a different reason, in that there's a massive shortage of Australian honey at the moment. So yeah, but China getting kicked off the world market, big effect on the world market of honey. Contamination, I think it was, I think it was chemicals. I think it was antibiotics, chlorophenol, I think it is. I'll pronounce that wrong, but it's, yeah, something like that rings a bell. So this is what we went and saw. And I've put in brackets, I've sort of put basically what they are equivalent to over here. So we went and saw their CSIRO, but we only saw the beekeeping part of their CSIRO. And the CSIRO, in terms of beekeeping scientists, has only got a handful of beekeeping scientists here in Australia. Over there they had over 100 within just the beekeeping component of the CSIRO. So again, another example of just how dramatic a difference and how the scale is completely different over there. We went and saw a DPI, Department of Primary Institutes, just for the Beijing area, which again was another massive organisation, and because Beijing's got 20 million people, the population of Australia just within one city. We went and saw a beekeeping cooperative, which is a lot of their businesses are based on, beekeeping businesses are based on cooperatives, and so where groups of, within an area, say in Leongatha, there'd be a co-op, say like this club here, and you'd be sharing resources, and people would have their beehives and they would go and harvest the honey, bring it in to extract it, and then store it and then be sold, and the co-op would be contracted to a bigger company. So we went and saw a small co-op like that and saw how they operated. Saw some commercial companies for beekeeping products, some beekeeping operations, and a university.
When you say it was a small co-op, is that small our term or small their term?
Oh, not exactly. Part of the whole trip we went on was a bit difficult because we got taken where they took us, and so we didn't have much choice. There was a bit of confusion in the communication that went on, so we wanted to see a lot more of this hands-on beekeeping and go and see bees, but we actually went and saw quite a few bigger companies, which we were more interested in this stuff. The co-ops, they vary in size depending on where they are and how many beekeepers and what sort of area, but from the general feel of things, we thought there'd be about 100 to 150 beekeepers linked into this co-op, and so share all the facilities from that co-op. This particular picture of a beekeeping operation here is a beekeeping operation that is focused on royal jelly production. So it's producing royal jelly for harvesting, because royal jelly is very popular in the whole of Asia for Chinese medicine and other cultures' medicine as well. So it's a cure-all for just about every ill there is known to man. So this is a production facility here, and same as here in Australia, everyone's yard of bees, where they've got their bees, is different depending on what they're doing with their bees and what they've got available around their place. So if you've got a great place, nice shady place to put your bees, you might put your bees underneath the shade, or you might put them in a sunny place so that they last through winter better. This particular place is down in one of those lower provinces. This is the main beekeeping area. It's a subtropical environment. It's sort of almost like between Brisbane and Townsville sort of weather, very humid in summer and very warm. The raw production here, they get a fair bit of rain. They've built a shelter over the top and just a line of beehives going all the way down past there. So there's about 40 beehives there in a row, and they're all hard up against each other. They've got all the entrances facing out to the right-hand side, and they just work down every hive and work on them as they go through their production. So this particular operation had about 120 beehives, and they would go around those beehives and harvest the raw jelly from beehive every 3 days. So it'd take 3 days or 1 day to go and do this row of bees, 40 hives, and then they'd have another shelter. They had another shelter set up, another 40 hives. That'd be the next day, and then the next day they'd do the last 40, and then they'd be back to this one again. And so when they're harvesting raw jelly, they're plucking it out, and then they're regrafting the grubs, and so 3 days later they come back and harvest more raw jelly out. So there's a picture of, well, there's two separate shelters. There's one on the left there and one on the right, and all very, very close together. So raw jelly is and producing a lot of raw jelly and a lot of queen cells is very intensive on the bees. The bees have to be in good conditions, plenty of pollen, plenty of nectar coming in, and so they've got to keep the hives very strong, and so the hives are wanting to draw out those queen cells and feed them more raw jelly. And so when this is a good area for this most of the year. When the conditions aren't good, they haven't got pollen or nectar coming in, then they'll feed them sugar syrup and pollen that they've collected elsewhere. So that's a fairly typical sort of operation in terms of the raw jelly production. This is another typical aspect of the raw jelly production. This is the entrance of the hive. We've actually got two entrances here, so one entrance just there, one entrance over here. They've actually got a split hive down the middle. They've got two queens within that one hive. So they've got two queens down in the bottom brood nest, and then a queen excluder, and then they've got a common super on top where they share the honey. So they're running double queen hives so they can get massive egg production, and so then a massive amount of bees in there, so that they're constantly thinking we're swarming, we've got to draw out these queen cells and produce a lot of raw jelly. That's a very, very standard operation for raw jelly production over there. The Chinese were very, the people we talked to were very surprised when talking about the differences between Australia and China, in that they utilise just about every aspect of the hive. You know, they're producing the raw jelly, they're producing propolis, they're producing honey and beeswax, and they're utilising them all. And they were very surprised that our main production is just honey, and as a consequence beeswax as well. But not really, there's no real market, there's never really been a market for raw jelly or propolis here in Australia, and so it's never been developed, and we've never really done it on a commercial scale.
So we're getting an increasing Asian population.
Maybe we will have, and that's the guy that actually, not the beekeeper was contracted to the guy that ran the company that took us here. He's actually a permanent resident here in Australia, in Melbourne, with his family over here, and he was constantly asking us about, let's do raw jelly in Australia. So, because he's had he's producing a lot, he's exporting a lot, and he's getting questions from especially his Japanese customers. We want some raw jelly from Australia, because Australia's clean and green, and it'd be better than this Chinese stuff. So he's keen to do it, but it's a matter of, well, beekeepers here in Australia want to know that they're actually going to get good money for it, because it's a lot of work, and be proven that it can work.
How does it go cost-wise compared with the raw jelly compared to honey price?
The raw jelly price is well, because you're producing a lot less, it's a lot more expensive. You could do it. Raw jelly is never taken off in Australia because of the labour component of it. And I've got a little video hooked into this a little bit later. I'll show you the labour intensity of it. And then also a tool that the guy that actually run this company has developed that might actually take some of that labour component out of it as well. But that's always been a problem, that why Australia couldn't do it. It's very labour intensive. Our labour is too expensive, and so we can never compete with Asian countries which can do it a lot cheaper.
What's the price comparison between their honey and your royal jelly?
The honey was comparable in terms of looking in supermarkets and honey shops over there. They had higher priced honey. There was some Australian honey over there. They had some honeys that were higher priced, some were lower priced, and the Australian honey was sitting in about the middle. So yeah, but yeah, it's the same as a market here.
Where does the quality on that? Is that a higher price? Yeah.
Yeah, and honey's down here, and royal jelly's up there.
No.
Oh, much more. Oh, like so rough prices. The guy was saying something about $400 a kilo. Some of this got lost in translation because sometimes they were talking about 400 Chinese dollars, and yeah, so sometimes they were talking about Australian dollars. But yeah, about $400 a kilo, whereas the price for bulk honey was somewhere down around $7 a kilo. So it's a dramatic difference.
What's the health of the roots like? Areas of them so incredibly deep. And I know people in Tennessee was not.
Yeah.
Was this area like that?
This area was. I'll go back a bit.
Couldn't actually hear the question.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'll think of the final bit. I know people over the Tennessee was not.
Oh, yeah.
It is so incredibly polluted, and I've always wondered how bees would cope. I don't know if this province is as polluted, but if you're in Hong Kong anytime, it's just mist rolling in off mainland China the whole time now, and it's just pollution off China.
Pollution was extremely. One day in Beijing it was horrible. Out here it wasn't bad. You could still see a haze in the air, but we were out a bit. But we had a lot of greenery and a lot of nature around us, so it was a farming area and also native bushland. So that was quite good. But bees seem to, even the ones in Beijing where the pollution, seem to be very healthy. No problems at all.
Yes, does it convert into the honey? Do actually they find contamination is in the honey or not? I just can't imagine it.
Don't know. They are doing some. Their CSIRO, we met a guy that they're doing some research about using bees as environmental sensors. And coincidentally, the DPI guy from New South Wales is also looking at an Australian person that is going to look into the same sort of thing, but more target at the rehabilitation of mining sites. So then when all the trees are planted and then actually getting bees and using them and see if they can sense if any residues are left there as well. But so they're looking into that. They're very concerned about that. Yeah.
Some of the apple growing areas in China are that polluted. The apple growers have to buy pollen in little packets and hand pollinate the trees because the bees wouldn't survive anywhere near their orchards.
The thing, like we've heard about that story, and I had a Lonely Planet guide when we went over there and read up on it as well, and in there it basically said that the good thing about China was with the dictatorship, way back when Chairman Mao, in the big apple growing areas, horticulture areas, they were having problems with birds, and Chairman Mao just said we need more fruit, so let's just fix it, let's kill all the birds, and so they did that, and then they had a problem with insects. Because the birds were eating the insects, so no worries, let's fix that, we'll just kill all the insects and just use chemicals. And so they killed all the bees and then had residue problems, and so from those residue problems and then also then from beekeepers learning, hey, if you go there you're going to get poisoned, they just refused to go there again, and so then it became an area, great fruit growing area, but no bees to do the pollination, and so yeah, hand pollination became the status quo.